Malakai Williams, a 13-year-old boy, appeared before the court accused of trespassing. But when he looked the judge straight in the eyes and declared, "You are my mother," everyone in the room was left speechless. What happened next turned their lives upside down and revealed secrets no one could have imagined. The courtroom was packed, but the silence was so intense that the creak of chairs could be heard with every movement. Malakai sat at the defendant's bench, head bowed. He was a small boy, dressed in a faded shirt so worn it seemed to have lost all color. His tattered, hole-ridden sneakers spoke of a life marked by hardship. Beside him, his public defender tried to appear calm, but his face betrayed palpable nervousness. Across from them, Judge Margot Vaughn adjusted her glasses and struck her gavel on the desk. The sound echoed through the room, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Margot, a serious 53-year-old woman, was known for her uncompromising nature and reputation as a fair but strict judge. That day, however, something felt different. The defense attorney spoke. "Your Honor, my client is accused of trespassing, but he is a 13-year-old child. He caused no damage, stole nothing. He was simply looking for a place to sleep." Margot looked at him over her glasses and responded in her usual firm tone, "Mr. Renner, the law exists to protect everyone, including homeowners whose property was invaded. We cannot downplay the matter just because he is young." Meanwhile, Malakai remained silent, nervously fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. When Margot finally addressed him, her voice seemed even sterner. "Malakai, do you understand why you're here? Do you know what it means to enter someone's home without permission?" He slowly raised his head, swallowing hard before murmuring, "I just wanted a place to stay. I wasn't going to take anything. I just wanted to feel safe." Murmurs rippled through the room, but Margot raised her hand to restore silence. Though her expression remained stern, something in the boy's tone weighed on her heart. Safety is not an excuse for entering someone's home without permission. There are places that can help you. Shelters, institutions. Malakai interrupted abruptly, his voice trembling but determined. "Those places aren't safe. They're never safe." He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure, but the words poured out as if he could no longer hold them back. "No one helps me, because no one wants me." His attorney tried to calm him, but Malakai continued, a spark of anger and despair in his eyes. He stared at Margot intently. "But that's not true. You're here. You're my mother." A crushing silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to the boy. Margot frowned, visibly shaken. "What did you say?" she asked. "You're my mother," he repeated, his voice quieter this time, but each word resonating clearly. He took a deep breath and said with more force, "You're my mother." The impact of those words was immediate. Whispers spread through the room like wildfire. The defense attorney stood speechless, unable to react. The court clerk stopped typing mid-sentence, but no one was more shocked than Margot herself. She blinked several times as if trying to make sense of what she had just heard. The gavel slipped from her hand, hitting the desk with a sharp thud. Margot stared at Malakai, but her mind seemed elsewhere. "That's absurd," she murmured almost to herself. Malakai didn't back down. He took a step forward, fists clenched. "I know it's you," he said, his voice wavering with emotion. "I've known for a long time." Margot opened her mouth, searching for something to say, but no words came. Her heart pounded, and a whirlwind of thoughts overwhelmed her. Before she could respond, an attorney in the room stood to interrupt. "Your Honor, this is clearly an attempt to divert attention. He's trying to manipulate the situation." Margot raised her hand to silence the speaker. She looked at Malakai again, her face marked by astonishment. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost trembling. Silence in the courtroom. The confusion in her eyes was evident despite her efforts to maintain composure. It felt as though the ground had collapsed beneath her. All she could do was stare at the boy, unable to say another word. Malakai stood firm, his hands trembling at his sides, his gaze fixed on Margot, who sat frozen at her bench. "I know it's you," he repeated, his voice now steadier. "I know because I saw your picture. My adoptive mother, Lucille, showed it to me. She told me everything before she died." Margot blinked as if waking from a dream or a nightmare. The name Lucille echoed in her mind, resurfacing a flood of memories she had carefully buried. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. You knew I existed, Malakai continued, his voice heavy with emotion. You knew, and you abandoned me. Those words hit Margot like a punch. She tried to regain control, swallowing hard before speaking in a hesitant voice. Malakai, I don't know what you're talking about. This is neither the time nor the place for this discussion. Malakai took a step forward, ignoring the growing murmurs in the room. This is exactly the place. You know it's true. I saw the picture. You were younger, but it's you. Lucille told me you were my mother. Why did you do this to me? The public defender tried to intervene, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Malakai, it might be better if... No, Malakai interrupted, brushing the hand away. He fixed his tear-filled eyes on Margot. Why did you leave me? I waited so long to find you, and now you're saying nothing. Are you going to keep pretending you don't know me? Margot felt her stomach twist. Her mind was in chaos. This boy had to be mistaken. It couldn't be true. Not here, not now. She felt the weight of every gaze in the room on her. I'm going to call for a recess, she declared suddenly, standing abruptly. Her voice was firm, but her legs trembled. She turned and left the courtroom through a side door, leaving the room in an uproar. In her private chambers, Margot leaned against the door, trying to breathe deeply. But the memories she had always tried to avoid surged back with force. Malakai as a baby. The night her then-husband Hugo insisted they give up the child, claiming they couldn't afford to raise him. Hugo's words echoed in her mind with painful clarity. Margot, you have a career to build. We're not ready for this. He'll have a better life with another family. She recalled their arguments, the silent tears she shed after he fell asleep. And finally, the moment she signed the adoption papers, her hands trembling as much as Malakai's had in that moment. It was a decision that seemed logical at the time, but had haunted her ever since. Back in the courtroom, Malakai sat down slowly, his face red with anger and sadness. He lowered his eyes, clenching his fists on his knees. She won't say anything, he muttered to himself. She's going to run away, like always. Before anyone could respond, the courtroom door burst open. A woman hurried in, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. Lorene Parker, the social worker who had overseen Malakai's adoption, stopped in the middle of the room. Tall and thin, her face bore the marks of time, but her eyes carried a determination unmatched by anyone else in the room. Malakai, she said, immediately catching his attention. He looked up, recognizing her instantly. I came as soon as I could, she continued. I didn't know this would happen here, but I think it's time the truth came out. The defense attorney looked at her, visibly confused. Who are you? He asked. I'm Lorene Parker. I was involved in Malakai's adoption process when he was a baby, and I think I can clarify some things, she replied confidently. Malakai's eyes filled with both hope and pain. He stood as if expecting an immediate answer. You knew all this time? You knew who she was? Lorene sighed, casting a reproachful glance toward the door Margot had exited through. Yes, I knew, but it wasn't my place to say. Margot, your mother, did what she thought was best at the time, but it wasn't fair to you. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Malakai asked, his voice breaking. Why did I only find out when it was too late? My adoptive mother died and left me alone, and now she's here, and she won't even look at me. Lorene approached him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Malakai, I know it's hard, but you deserve answers, and Margot needs to give them. It's time she faced the truth. On the other side of the door, Margot was still leaning against it, hearing every word. Her legs felt weak, but she knew she could no longer hide. The memories of Hugo, baby Malakai, and the promise that everything would be fine crumbled all at once. She ran a trembling hand over her face, took a deep breath, and steadied herself. When Margot finally opened the door, all eyes turned to her. She took a deep breath before addressing Malakai and Lorene. We need to talk in a more private setting. Malakai hesitated for a moment, his eyes fixed on her, as if weighing whether it was worth following her. Lorene placed a light hand on his shoulder and whispered, Go, Malakai. You deserve to hear what she has to say. After a few seconds of silence, he nodded slowly and followed Margot. The three of them walked down a narrow hallway to a small room at the back of the courthouse. Margot pulled out a chair and sat, her hands clasped on her knees. I know you want answers, Malakai, and you're absolutely right to want them. I don't know where to start. Why did you abandon me? Why wasn't I good enough for you? Is that it? Malakai asked. Margot closed her eyes for a moment as if his words physically struck her. It's not that, she said, finally looking at him. You were never the problem. The problem was me. Your arrival happened at a time in my life when I thought I couldn't be your mother. Malakai frowned, pain evident in his eyes. He crossed his arms as if shielding himself from what he was hearing. That doesn't make sense. You were there, weren't you? Why didn't you try? I was just a baby. Margot swallowed hard. I was young, Malakai. I had just finished my studies, started a career, and my husband at the time, Hugo, convinced me that the best thing for you was to grow up with another family. He said we had nothing to offer you, that you deserved better than what we could give. You chose him over me, Malakai retorted without hesitation. You chose your career. You chose it, but you didn't choose me. Lorene intervened, her voice calm but firm. Malakai, I know it's hard to hear, but these kinds of decisions are never simple. Margot, you need to be honest with him. He deserves to know everything. Margot nodded, visibly shaken. I signed the papers because I was scared of letting you down. I told myself I was giving you a chance at a better life. But the truth is, I was running away. And I've lived with that ever since. Not a day goes by that I don't wonder if I made the right decision. And seeing you here today, I think I made a mistake. Malakai took a deep breath, as if absorbing the weight of what he had just heard. Lucille told me about you. She said you were young, that you probably had your reasons. But she never understood why you didn't come back for me. Why you never tried to find me. Margot shook her head, a silent tear rolling down her cheek. I thought it was too late. That you had a family, a life. I didn't want to come back and disrupt everything again. After my separation from Hugo, it became even harder to face. So I hid behind my work. It was easier to pretend to move forward. But I didn't move forward, Malakai shot back. Do you know how many times I wondered what I did wrong? How many times I looked in the mirror trying to figure out why no one wanted me? I never had a family. I had foster homes, social workers, and foster families that never lasted. And now you're here, telling me you just gave up on me. Margot placed a hand on her forehead as if trying to ease the pain his words caused. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry for everything, for not being there, for not being strong enough. Lorene stepped forward, looking at both Malakai and Margot. Margot, you can't change the past, but Malakai is here now, and he needs more than apologies. And Malakai, she's here. It doesn't erase what you've been through, but it might be the start of something. Malakai looked at Lorene, then at Margot. He seemed torn, as if he wanted to believe but was afraid of being hurt again. You want to start? He asked, his voice low but full of meaning. You want to try being my mother now? The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Margot looked at Malakai, and for the first time, she saw not only the child she had lost, but also a chance to write a new story. Yes, Malakai, I want to try, she replied, her eyes brimming with tears. The beginnings were difficult. Margot knew reconnecting with Malakai wouldn't be easy, and he, in turn, seemed wary of her every gesture. Lorene facilitated their first steps, organizing more frequent meetings. Nothing forced, just small moments to get to know each other better. The first time Margot visited the community center where Malakai often spent his time, she felt out of place. The place was modest, with brightly painted walls and a basketball court in the back. Malakai was there, playing with other boys, looking more relaxed than he had in court, laughing with his friends as he tried to make a shot. Margot stood at the entrance watching without wanting to interrupt. After a few minutes, Malakai noticed her. He paused, hesitating, and looked at her as if unsure what to do. Margot simply smiled and nodded slightly. Malakai rolled his eyes, but a half-smile appeared on his face before he returned to the game. When the game ended, he approached slowly, his face sweaty. "You didn't have to come," he said, his tone slightly defensive. "I know," Margot replied calmly. "But I wanted to see where you spend your time." Malakai shrugged, grabbing his water bottle. "There's not much to see. It's just this." "This seems important to you," she replied. "So it's important to me, too." He didn't respond, but something in his look showed that her words had mattered. The days passed, and their meetings became more frequent. Margot made an effort to respect Malakai's space while finding ways to be present. She took him to dinner several times, and though their early conversations were short and punctuated by silences, Malakai began to open up little by little. "I thought about you yesterday," he said suddenly one evening while eating hamburgers at a diner. Margot, surprised, looked at him, keeping her tone casual. "Oh yeah? Why?" "There was a new kid at the foster home I was at before. He looked lost, you know? And I thought, if you had come earlier, maybe I wouldn't have felt like that when I was little." Margot felt her throat tighten. She wanted to apologize again, but knew it wouldn't be enough. Instead, she said, "I can't change the past, Malakai, but I can be here now. And if that boy needs help, maybe we can help him together." Malakai didn't respond, but nodded slowly. It was a start. Margot also began to take an interest in Malakai's passions. One day he mentioned that he liked to draw. Without saying anything, Margot went to an art supply store and bought him a sketchbook and pencils. When she gave them to him, his reaction was shy. "You didn't have to," he said, holding the sketchbook carefully. "I know," Margot replied, "but I wanted to." Later, she saw one of his drawings for the first time, a simple but detailed landscape. She complimented him, and Malakai looked away, embarrassed. "It's not a big deal," he muttered. "Yes, it is," she insisted. "You have talent." A faint smile appeared on Malakai's face. Over the months, their relationship grew. Malakai was less uneasy around Margot, and she noticed small gestures showing he was starting to trust her. He would sometimes say things like, "Maybe we could do this again," or, "I like it when you're here." Margot knew their bond was still fragile, but it was strengthening. The most significant moment came when Margot decided it was time to make things official. She filed a petition to gain custody of Malakai. It was a long process, filled with court appearances and interviews, but the day of the final hearing finally arrived. Malakai sat beside her, quieter than usual. When the judge announced that custody was granted, Margot felt overwhelming relief. She turned to Malakai, who was visibly trying to hide a smile. "There," Margot said, her voice thick with emotion. "Now it's official." "You think this will work?" he asked, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "I don't know," Margot replied honestly, "but I think we can try together." As they left the courthouse, Margot held out her hand. For a moment, Malakai hesitated. Then he took it. They walked side by side, and for the first time Margot felt something real beginning. The sun was shining outside, and as they crossed the street, she heard Malakai murmur softly, "I've never had someone who stayed. Maybe now I've found someone." Margot squeezed his hand a little tighter, saying nothing. It was just the beginning. How often do we judge others without knowing their story? Malakai and Margot show us that the past can divide us, but it's also possible to rebuild bonds, even amidst pain and regret. What do you think? Can love and forgiveness transform lives? Share your thoughts in the comments and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to start over.